Hello, it's Big Boy Bloater here for the Blues Podcast. We'll be taking a little break soon, but Series 2 is on its way, so keep your eyes and ears open for that. Let us know who you would like to see or hear on the Blues Podcast. Head over to our social media channels. That is Instagram, if you're an Instagrammer, The Blues Podcast Official. Or if you're on Facebook, then go to facebook.com/The Blues Podcast Official. Send us in your suggestions for guests and stay tuned for Season 2.
Hi, I'm Kim Simmonds with Savoy Brown, and this is the Blues Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Blues Podcast. I'm Big Boy Bloater, and I tell you what, I've got a real legend of the blues with me here today for a little chat. He's been in the business over 50 years. I mean, he's made so many albums, I can't even count them on all my extremities. It's incredible. He's played with loads of blues legends. He is a blues legend himself. It's the one and only, the fantastic Kim Simmonds. Hello, Kim. How you doing?
Oh, what a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much.
Oh, nice for a man with a wonderful career, I would say, but yeah. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. I'm, of course, I've been living in the States now for a long, long time. And I'm still creative and I'm still enjoying playing guitar. I love playing guitar. I love listening to guitar,
Yeah.
And I've still got the energy, the nervous energy that propels me. So
that's good. I haven't got the energy anymore. You're doing well.
Or maybe I'm just doing that for the camera, But we have our ups and downs.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim, I always like to start these little chats by going right back. And I know for you, right back, it's quite a long way, but right. I find it quite interesting, especially from you. Lots of the people I speak to on the Blues Podcast, I ask them how they got into blues in the first place, and they will say, "Oh, by listening to, I got into it through the '60s bands, and all those guys who were reviving the music, and then I went back and heard, Howlin' Wolf and Little Walter and all those kind of guys." I mean, you were there before that kind of blues wave, though, weren't you? How did you get into blues so early?
Yeah, it started, as most of us, we have a family member usually, a brother, sister, in my case, a dad, in my case, my elder brother, 7 years older than me. So he started buying out records. I was about 6 years old, 53. I think his first record he bought was Johnny Ray Cry, which is regarded as one of the, pivotal records for edgy pop music, And so I would sit by the dance set record player, listening to that for hours. And then he would, then of course Bill Haley came along, and with Rock Around the Clock. Then I was, 7 or 8, and Elvis, and the closest we could get to those people were by the movies. I think Rock, Rock, Rock was a great rock and roll movie from the 50s.
With Jimmy Cavello.
Yeah, exactly.
Jimmy Cavello and the House Rockers. Yeah, I played with Jimmy a couple of years back. He was fantastic.
He's fantastic. And so he would take me to those movies. Flash forward, so throughout the 50s, I was listening to a lot of conglomeration of rhythm and blues, gospel music, jazz, blah, 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 rock, via my brother. Flash forward to the early 60s. And then those artists started to come over more so to, I think from 59 on, maybe Buddy Holly came over in 59.
Yeah.
But I started to go with my brother to shows in London where we had moved from Wales, and the family did. So we would see, Little Richard, Fats Domino, all the American artists that came over. And then that would be 61, 62, 63. All of a sudden we had those blues festival tours, where Chicago blues guys came over, Howlin' Wolf, Willie Dixon and so forth. So I was still slightly too young to see those shows, but they would be on TV, so I would see Sonny Williamson on TV and then lo and behold, I was about 16, and I did get to see Howlin' Wolf at the Marquee Club. I got to see Jimmy Reed at the Flamingo Club. All of a sudden, I was able to see the great artists that since I was about 13 years old, I'd been listening to. So I'd had all these influences, doo-wop, rock and roll, R&B, gospel, jazz. And then I think it was maybe 63 that, or even earlier, that I suddenly realized that it was Chicago blues that was talking to me. Right,
yeah.
Because up until that point, I just liked all black music, anything, And but at that point, it was wow, this is. You hear Freddie King, you heard Earl Hooker, you heard Otis Rush, and it was like, this is the future of guitar. I recognized it straight away as a young teenager, and of course, when you're that young, you want to be part of the future. So I started to got myself a guitar and started to copy Freddie King.
Right, nice, good place to start. I think you're talking about the American tours that came to Britain in the early 60s, sort of 61, 63, the Great American Folk Tour thing they called it, didn't they?
Right, yeah.
I think for them, America had kind of dropped the blues by then, hadn't they? They kind of like moved on to something. They didn't want that anymore. So coming to England was like a second wave for a lot of those blues artists, and I guess lots of people like yourself were desperate to see these artists who you've heard on record for all these years, and it was a great thing. I always get quite fascinated about all these guys being on the bus together, wondering how that must have been. And yeah,
they were taken seriously, and I think suddenly they were true artists. I think we were able to see them from a distance, and. Because they are true folk artists, I think a lot of the blues artists. When I say folk, I don't mean the genre of folk. I mean folk in general, like there would be folk painting or folk. It was
folklore. Yeah,
it's easy to miss the art in folk art, because you'll see somebody painting, do a stick figure. Well, anybody can do a stick figure, but certain artists made art out of painting stick figures. And so it's the same with blues and the same with music. That was it would be easy for a lot of people to miss the beauty of the blues at the time. But of course, we had the distance from America. We were able to see and listen and appreciate it without, for what it was, as great art.
Yeah.
And so I think that. Yeah, so that's why I think they were very popular in Europe. That distance thing, we could see a little more clearly.
I like what you said about the stick figure idea. I think that's a really good analogy of it. I think maybe if you listen to someone like John Lee Hooker, and you would say, well, that guy just plays one chord all the time, and he's just, but it's what he does with that one chord, isn't it? It's the way, he's just playing one chord, just one riff. But what he does with it—that's the artistry right there, isn't it? That's the excitement. It's like,
there's something in, he's something in his voice. That's the other thing too. Why I liked Hooker. Of course, I liked Howlin' Wolf. It's the same with someone like Paul McCartney. Flash forward into our world now. Paul McCartney could sing anything, and you want to listen to his voice. He's just got that voice that is, so charming. And in a way, it's the same with Howlin' Wolf. I'm not saying that Howlin' Wolf was a charming thing, but
I've heard some stories, but
it was totally arresting, that voice.
Yeah.
Hooker was totally arresting. You wanted to hear what he was going to sing next, and it was. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it's hypnotic, I would say. I was talking to someone else about Hal Milk the other day, and we were discussing Smokestack Lightning, the song. And that's just one riff all the way through. But
right.
Hubert Sumlin playing that riff, it's hypnotic. I get sucked into it. I could listen to it for hours. It's just, I find it brilliant. It's such a great riff. I could just listen to it over and over again. And then you've got Wolf on top of it, just, belting it out.
Just a voice for the ages, and I backed up Johnny Hooker on a tour in the UK in 1967. So that was that was pretty exciting.
How did you find him? Was he a pleasant guy to be around?
Yeah, and I knew him the whole of my life then, and it was fantastic. All the great blues musicians are fantastic, and the only times I've run into attitudes is with people who are not the great blues musicians. Right, and John was fantastic, a regular guy, and even up until in his 80s. He'd have his star socks on, his glasses on. He'd be the boogeyman, whatever.
Yeah.
And that was just, he had that dangerous thing going all the time. But of course, he was nothing like that. And the very first time I met him, we had back in the 60s, we would rent a club to rehearse in. And this particular day, we knew John was coming from the States. We're going to do the tour together. We rented the Ram Jam Club. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ram Jam Club.
I know the name. I'm a bit too young to have been there, but yeah, I know the name.
It used to be in Brixton. And so we rented it out. It was in the afternoon. And we were, we figured, we'll rehearse with John, get ready for the tour. So he comes in, and with my brother, I think my brother must have picked him up at the airport or something. He came in and said, "What am I doing here?" And I said, "Well, we're rehearsing, John." "I don't rehearse." And he turned around and walked out. So it was like, okay. Right, yeah. So this is, real bluesmen don't rehearse. So
I'll tell you a funny story about a rehearsal that I had once with, you might remember the guys. He was a child prodigy. He was called Sugar Child Robinson. He used to play the boogie woogie piano, just a little kid.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, he was rediscovered again a few years later, and it was my job to back him up at this festival. And he turned up, and he was still that tall. He was still exactly the same height. It was odd. Anyway, he wandered up onto the stage, and he sat down on the piano, and he started playing this just kind of scales sort of thing. It was almost like hotel lobby music. It was a bit weird. And I'm looking at the bass player, and the bass player's looking at me, and we're going, well, I don't know what that is. We worked out it's in F sharp. It's in F sharp. So we're trying to sort of groove with him, and he's just playing scales kind of thing. Anyway, he sort of does a little flourish, and then he puts the lid down on the piano, and he goes, "Yeah, that's it. They're all in F sharp. They all go like that, just faster or slower. I'll see you later." And he got off from the piano, and he walked. It was in a big hall at a big festival, and there was a record stall at the back of the room, and he walked straight up to the record stall. He went through the records. He found his own CD, bought it, and disappeared. Really? We didn't see him until the evening. Then it was strange. He finally turned up 5 minutes before the gig. He's got a bit of paper. We say to him, "Is that the set list? Is that the set list?" And he went, "Yeah, it's mine." He wouldn't let us see the set list. It was like. Oh, it was one of the most strangest gigs I've ever been on. It only lasted 25 minutes, and that was it. He got up and walked off. But it was a strange one. Sugar Child Robinson. Yeah.
That's the great thing about this business. The stories are remarkable.
Yeah. If you weren't there, you wouldn't believe it. I tell you. Yeah. Listen, I want to get back to the early days, and so we've heard how you got into blues music, but. How was it you got into the guitar specifically? Was it just through listening to those blues songs that really drew you to the guitar? Or was there something else? Was it, because you thought the guitar would get all the girls or something? What was it that drew you to the guitar?
Yeah. Girls weren't in the picture. It was, I'd always liked the sound of the guitar since Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley had that great guitar solo. Then I got a guitar. Should I tell you my first guitar story?
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to hear that. Yeah.
So I wanted to play guitar, but it was right out of the blue, and I felt too embarrassed to say to my parents, I want to play guitar because my background, there's nothing like that in my background with the family. So I saw in the back of my parents' crossword puzzle book, I saw an ad for a guitar. And it was right next to the Charles Atlas ad. Charles Atlas was a big strong man. And at the top, it said, "Make friends at school." That was the big thing. So I thought, I'd get myself a guitar. and I'll make some friends, you know. And so I saved my money up. I had a paper round, saved my money up, sent away for the guitar. Weeks went by, you know, so it was like, okay, this is some kind of scam. Even back then, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, that's it. They've taken my money and gone. But I looked up the bedroom window one day. I could see it clearly. And there was the postman walking down the street with this big box. And I said, my God, that has to be the guitar. So I ran down to the front door. I could see this like daylight. Got the box, ran up to my bedroom and opened it. And one thing the manufacturers failed to tell me was it came unassembled. And it was an acoustic guitar, so it was all in bits. So I had just put together my Japanese transistor radio, which was a big thing to do as a kid back then. You get all the parts and you put it together. Maybe, you know, it still is in some way. But so I put the transistor radio together, and I could get, you know, Luxembourg and that. So I could surely put this guitar together. So I put the guitar together. What do I do now? And I kind of found out that there was a gentleman in my area that knew a bit about guitar. So I took it to him and said, I have no idea what to do to tune it. What do you do? But I did take that guitar to school to make friends when on like a school trip or some stuff like that. And everybody says, wow, you're good. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not doing anything. Can't anybody do this? You know? And so that was a surprise to me that I thought, well, I'm doing nothing. And yet people thought it was pretty good. So there's my story. I put the guitar together, locked myself in that bedroom for about 2 years, and just kept playing the guitar. And lo and behold, 2 years later, I come out of the room and hallelujah, I can play guitar. So that's my guitar story.
It's as easy as that, kids. That's all you got to do. Lock yourself in a bedroom for 2 years and play the guitar. I'm desperate to know what happened to that guitar.
Well,
I take it it's not still around now, is it?
That's not still around, but an old pal of mine from London has. Then I moved on to an electric guitar. I realized very quickly that if I was going to be an electric guitarist, I better not continue with the acoustic guitar because, as we know, you can become an acoustic guitarist and it's very difficult to switch to electric and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I thought, oops, I'm going to put this down quickly and get myself an electric guitar. But I want to play electric guitar. And this would have been 63, something like that. And I bought myself a Hofner guitar.
Yeah.
And it was a copy of the 335. And a friend of mine in London still has that guitar. So so that's pretty cool. But no, the acoustic one, that's probably long gone.
Firewood now, eh?
Somebody may have it somewhere.
Yeah. Probably locked themselves away in a bedroom for a couple of years and with it.
Right. Yeah. Then maybe they're doing it. But the Hofner, I couldn't sort of be virtuoso type playing on the Hofner. I realized quickly that I had to get a guitar that I could really solo on, because primarily I'm a soloist. For most of those early years, I couldn't play rhythm guitar for the life of me. I was primarily a soloist. That's what I wanted to be, and so I had to have a guitar neck that I could play solos on.
So after a couple of years of being locked away in a bedroom, then getting an electric guitar, let's talk about Savoy Brown. How did that come about? What was the thing that sparked that off?
I had quit school at 15 in late '63 to go out into the world, primarily to play guitar.
Yeah. And,
found that I couldn't play guitar, and it was a big wide world. So I got myself a job as a clerk at the Ministry of Defence and, took the civil service exam. I figured, whoops, I made a mistake here. I'd better get myself a proper job with a proper pension, which I did do. And I was playing guitar. And I was going to a store in Soho called Transat Imports, where John Mayall would go. I'd see him there and a bunch of people. We'd all get our American import records from this store. It was a basement store in Soho. And one day it was open at 10 o'clock in the morning. I got there and it was raining. It wasn't open. I was in the doorway, and another fella stood by me out of the rain, and we started talking, and about what we liked, the music we liked, and so it turns out that it was John O'Leary, and I said, yeah. He said, yeah, I play harmonica, and I've met Little Walter. I said, are you kidding me? He said, yeah. He had met and spoke to Little Walter on those folk blues tours. Right, John was a couple of years older than me. And so I said, oh, I play guitar. And he said, yeah. I said, where do you live? He said, Wandsworth. I said, oh. He said, he's just down the road from me. So we said, let's have a record session. So I went to his place. And wouldn't you know, he had a Cobra 78 by Otis Rush called Grown in the Blues. And I remember him putting this on, and it was like, oh, you've got to be kidding. This is like the best drug I've ever taken. We decided to form a band. I think I was probably the prime instigator of the whole thing. I think I said something. We were discussing how to start it. I saw John last year, and we have never really got together to talk about this. And I'd love to talk to him about it because he might remember more than I remember.
Yeah.
But we eventually said, he said, I know there used to be a folk club, he said, at a pub called the Nag's Head. And because I said, let's play it, let's get this going somehow. And so we went to the pub, and it was empty now. The folk club, that folk craze had gone. But there was an upstairs room, and there was just an open room with chairs around the perimeter. But there was a stage about a foot off the ground. And I said, John, this is, I'm not sure if I said, John, but I said, my thing was, this is fantastic. I can rehearse the band here on stage in real time.
Yeah.
This is very, very important, I think, if anybody's listening and watching about this, is how you get ahead with a career is, you're not rehearsing in your bedroom. You're not rehearsing here. You've got the band on a stage. And I said, I'm going to open this. We're going to play, and we're going to open to the public. And so we rehearsed from, it was the winter of 65 we rehearsrsed, and in early 66, we opened the Nag's Head, and we called it Kilroy's. It became a bona fide venue, and Freddie King played there, Fleetwood Mac came and played there. And amazingly, with the internet, an Englishman who's just emigrated to New Zealand wrote me, because he found out we went to the same school, Spencer Park in Wandsworth. And he sent me a photo. So I think this is you. We become friends. But anyway, this was only about 2 months ago, he wrote me. And he was there at the very first show. He said he was walking home from his girlfriend's in Wandsworth. And he hears this band. Sounds like the Muddy Waters band. So he goes upstairs, and of course, it was me with Savoy Brown. And he said there were 6 people there. And I remember there were 6 people originally. I'm saying 6, it might be 7, 5. And so what I love about the current technology is, we can I can actually get in touch with somebody. Because sometimes I think it's a dream. Did it actually happen? Am I just giving you a bunch of BS? And all of a sudden, someone's, yeah, I was there. You sounded exactly like the Muddy Waters band, because that was my intention. And we had put some flyers up in London. Before you knew it, it was packed. It was mobbed. We were a big success. We were the talk of Battersea, that South London area. It was the epicenter of blues, which is lost in British history. So I'll have to my books. I'm writing my book. And Mike Vernon, who had his own label called Blue Horizon. He had recorded Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton. He came and said, I'd like to do some singles with you. So we did two or three singles with Mike for the Blue Horizon label. Mike also was then producing for Decca Records. He produced the Beano album with Neil and Eric Clapton. And then Savoy Brown was the next album for Decca that he produced. So we were off and running in 66. The band was fantastic. I regret very much that John left the band. John O'Leary, who played the harp, he left, and so I had, then I was left to go a different direction. And what I regret is I'll never know what that band could have been like. I've never known what kind of guitar player I would have been.
London at that time, the sort of mid '60s, it was literally like the epicenter of blues, wasn't it? It exploded with blues bands and such great bands. Who was
it exploded in '67.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who out of all those bands really caught your eye and made you think, God, they're a great band, aren't they?
Fleetwood Mac, you kidding me? That was just like, why bother? It's, I mean, the rhythm section. I mean, Mick Fleetwood, Peter Green, Jeremy with his doing the Almo thing. It was just like, oh man, the first time I saw them was when they played at the Nag's Head in Battersea, and I went along. I think I jammed that night, and they were phenomenal, and they were. I was heavily under the influence of Peter then for the longest time, and we all are, and he'd play dun 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 dun, and they'd be looking at him as if he was Segovia, It used to freak him out. It was like, I'm just, the adulation was ridiculous. And of course, Eric had that a couple of years earlier when I used to follow Mail and Eric, right from the very first gig they did in one of the first gigs at the Flamingo Club I was at.
Just to bring it right up to date, how differently do you think the blues scene is now? I mean, it's obviously the blues has always been a beast that's kind of grown and changed as it's gone along. I mean, it's quite different from that 60s vibe now, but what do you think of the current health of the blues scene?
It's difficult to talk about it in connection to the 60s because in some ways nothing has changed. Right. People are still playing a Les Paul through a Marshall or a Telecaster through a Vox AC30, which was my first professional setup, was the Telecaster through an AC30. People are still playing that. People are still looking like they come from the 1960s. So in many ways, it hasn't changed at all. And in many ways, it has. The process of starting a band, being a musician, are exactly the same as they were back then. You start in a garage with a bunch of friends, or wherever you do, you're in your bedroom, or so in many ways it hasn't changed. It's very, very difficult because it's a very small part of the music scene. When I started Savoy Brown, I went to Bob Hall, he's a pianist, and I wanted him to join the band because he had played with the Groundhogs a couple of years previously in '63. So in '65, I went to Bob's house, and he did his best to convince me not to start a blues band. He said, "No, you won't make any money. It's a useless thing, So I was lucky to form a blues band, took it into the charts in America, and it became part of the mainstream. Because when I started, it was negligible in terms of maybe 1%, of the music scene. So nowadays, it's about 1% of the music scene. And unless you have a Stevie Ray Vaughan come along, who can now, bring it onto the radio, bring it onto the halftime Super Bowl shows, unless you can really crack the mainstream, which is what George Thorogood and, later on and beyond the 60s period, George Thorogood and people like that, they brought it, we don't have those people right now. We have great musicians that I enjoy, and I try to listen to everybody, but the current blues scene probably is lacking, someone that's going to take the music into the mainstream, because then we all benefit. Right. The fact that, people went before me, like Eric Clapton and so forth, made it possible. Well, John Mayall in particular with Eric literally made it possible for me, because they would go into a club that, they were all dance clubs back then, but they would go into a club and suddenly, 100 college kids would show up, and the promoter would go, "Oh, there's something here. Have you got another band like that?" And so I would follow along, luckily on John's coattails, is it? Is that the expression?
Yes. Riding on the coattails, I think. Yeah.
And it's the same now. We've got some great musicians, and in many ways they have. In many ways, Joe Bonamassa, for instance, comes immediately to mind. He has cracked the bigger world.
Just needs that kick into the mainstream again, eh?
It really does, doesn't it? Yeah.
I've been talking to a few people this week, blues musicians from all over the place. Particularly, I've been talking to a few American blues musicians who have left America and gone to live in Europe, in Switzerland or in Scandinavia or something. And here you are, from Britain, from Great Britain, starting off in Wales, moving to London, and now you're living in America. So it's a reverse. What was it that made you move to America in the first place?
I was married to an American girl, one thing, and America is such a complicated country that you can go back and forth with your feelings. You can think it's great, it's not great, it is great. Eventually, it was like it's great, and so I kind of always wanted to. This is where the music comes from that I love. I wanted to compete in the world of blues, which primarily was American. That's where all my success came from, was in America. So the ability for me to buy a house and things. So by the end of the 70s, I was touring over there a lot, away for months, and coming home, and that factor was going on. Then before you knew it, the music scene changed immensely in the 70s. Now you've got punk bands everywhere. I went to see The Clash at the Marquee. I liked The Clash, but it was like very foreign music to me. Interestingly, when I went to the side of the stage, it had Savoy Brown all over the PA. They had bought our own PA. But it was like, I felt completely like useless. It was like, I'm a blues guitar player playing 15-minute, solos on the guitar, hopefully of a high standard. And, nobody wanted that. I was a dinosaur.
2-minute long records then, wasn't it? As fast as you could go. And
hit a few splash chords, draw the stick man artistically and you were fine, All of a sudden I was painting like big, landscapes, and like, well, this guy's, belongs to the Victorian age. So it was, those are the kind of factors, American wife, and I said, that's it. I am going to, my career I didn't think was really going too far. And so I packed my whole household belongings up into a ship's container, including a grand piano, and just shipped everything over to Ohio. Then it was very hard work, because suddenly you speak the same language, but you're in a culture that is quite a bit different.
Very different, yeah.
Very, very, very different. So I would think it would took me about 10 years, believe it or not, before I really. But I was committed, to seeing it out, and I didn't go back to England for 7 years, only because I made a commitment. I didn't have one foot in one country and one foot in the other. I thought this was my future was in America, and I'm going to make that commitment, which I did, and very, very hard years. And I spoke the language, and I knew America, and I was married to an American, but it was still very, very hard because I say Englishness, the Britishness was ingrained in me, but I've been here now for longer than I ever have been in the UK. So it's worked out very well, and you're talking about how has the music changed, and nothing much has changed. I played last January before the virus hit. I played the 100 Club. And it was like, nice. I had my old road manager with me in the UK, and when I toured Europe, that was with me at the very beginning. Yeah. And we had to find the 100 Club, and he lives in England. And wouldn't you know, there's the back entrance. It was just like, it's just 67, so it was nothing had changed. It was like, so it's remarkable in life how everything changes, the old expression, and nothing changes. And it was fantastic to actually, pull into the courtyard behind the 100 Club.
Yeah.
And it
Berners
was like,
Place back there.
yeah, it was it was just like, this is fantastic. Do I miss that? Of course I miss that. I miss that part of living in the UK where, I can, have that wonderful sentimentality, and it's still there.
I'm so glad that the 100 Club is still there, and like you say, it hasn't really changed very much, has it? I mean, there's a little bit more sweat on the ceiling, I think, and obviously one big thing is they've got a proper dressing room now, which is streets ahead of how it used to be, isn't it? I mean, you must have some nightmare stories about dressing rooms from the 100 Club from years ago.
I remember playing the Newcastle Agogo, was it called? The Newcastle Agogo up in the 60s. And you couldn't leave the dressing room because you'd get beat up. It was like, nice. it was incredible, and there were signs there, like we're not responsible if you leave this place. So, wow. Yeah, that the 100 Club was astonishingly fun night, and, but what do I remember for the early days? The Flamingo Club, most of all, that was a great place, but all the places were fantastic, and rules were more lenient. So at 15, you could go into pubs, you could go wherever you wanted to.
We're almost out of time, Kim, but there's always one question I like to finish these things up with, and it's a little convoluted, it's a little bit crazy, but I'll explain it to you, and you see what you think. So,
all right.
So here it comes. Here's my killer end question. Okay. Yep. I want you to imagine, if you can, that we are in the future. Okay. A few years into the future, and
you're going to give me a few years. Well, I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. You might have a couple of robot parts, maybe keeping you going or something. I don't know, but you're definitely still with us, still playing, still hot as ever. Anyway, the world is quite a nice place in the future. In this future that we've made, it's a lovely place. Everybody's kind of rubbing along great now, and it's getting, the world's a good place, and we're just out to do things. Yeah, right. And the whole thing's held together with this world president who everybody thinks is doing a great job, and it's great.
Oh, yeah, an imaginary world president. Is that what you're throwing?
Yeah,
at me?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So everything's going great until we get the news that we have 3 days left. There's a huge meteorite coming towards the Earth. It's the size of like Pluto or so. No, Jupiter. It's absolutely, it's going to completely obliterate the Earth. There's going to be nothing left whatsoever. So the world president gets on the phone to you, and he or she it says, Kim, listen, I'm sure you've heard about the asteroid that's coming. We've only got 3 days left. Look, we're going to put together a big, huge world party. Everybody's going to go out in fine fashion. We're just going to party on until the end. He says to you, look, we need a really, really great band. We want you to put together a special band for this world party, and we want you to play the last song. So what I want to know is, who is going to be in this special band of yours, and what is going to be the last song played on planet Earth by you?
Do these have to be musicians living right now? I mean, in the future?
This is in the future, so we have holograms. You can have holograms of anybody you want. They can come and play on stage. Okay. So yeah, everybody always asks that. It's a good question, and yeah, you go with whatever you want. Whoever you need, you've got them.
Oh, now I've got to think of all the musicians, because it's like when people say, "Who was that actor in the movie?" and you cannot possibly remember who Sean Connery was. I would. Well, we're talking about this. We're talking about the 60s, so I would say I want to recreate the great British blues band, from that time period. Oh, yeah. So I would have Eric Clapton on guitar. It would be three guitar. Well, actually, there would be no room for me. I'd just be the producer. I'd have Stevie Winwood playing guitar, Peter Green, I'd have Eric. They'd be playing guitar right up front, and I would have John Mayall playing harmonica. Yeah. I would, or maybe I would have, from the Alexis Corner band, the harmonica player. I would have John O'Leary. I don't know. I would have an orchestra of British blues musicians from the 60s.
Right.
And what would I do in it? I would just be playing. I'd be strumming in the background. You know, actually, I can't strum very well, so I would. I would. Because we talk with, you know, that's what we primarily have talked about. So I would think that, you know, I would have an orchestra full of the 60s musicians I grew up with.
So with all those blues players on stage together at one time, they're all taking a solo. This song's going to go on for quite a long time. Right? It's going to be a long song, yeah? We've only got 3 days until the asteroid hits.
But, of course, in terms of drummers, my favorite drummer is the drummer that played on the Little Richard records, played on some of the Jimmy Reed records.
Earl Palmer, right?
Earl Palmer. Thank you.
Yeah.
He's my favorite old drummer. So he, you know, if it was going to be a band, he would certainly be the drummer I would want to play with. Yeah. You know, bass player. Now you've got me on the 60s thing, so I'm thinking Jack Bruce. It would probably be Willie Dixon on bass, Earl Palmer on drums, Earl Hooker would have to be playing guitar and slide. I would say Freddie King. I'd like to be the third guitar player, and you know. That's a pretty good start for a band, I would think. I would maybe Paul Butterfield on harmonica.
What would the song be? Yes.
What would the
song be?
Of course, there's no question about the song. It would be Muddy Waters' Louisiana Blues. Oh. That's my favorite all-time blues song, and I hope that when the time comes when I have to go after the greater eternity, I hope that that's the song they'll play. For me,
well, it's going to be a while yet. Don't forget, you're going to get those robot parts to keep you going and all that. You'll be with us for a while yet. Definitely.
Well, I've already got through a couple of close encounters, and I'm still here. So
Kim, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you today. We could sit here talking for hours. I know you've got so many great stories, but unfortunately our time is up for this one. But I just want to say, keep on doing what you're doing. Everyone loves it. Your music and your guitar playing is inspirational.
Thank you so much.
And fantastic. And I want to hear many, many more albums. I know you've got something like 43 albums out already, 45 albums. Let's get it to 100 at least, okay? So just keep doing it.
Oh, man, it brings tears to my eyes. I really appreciate that very much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Kim, all the best, and I hope to see you on the road somewhere soon, sometime. You never know, eh?
Right, I'd like to see you play as well. So let's get up there together. You're welcome to jam, okay? Anytime you bring your guitar along.
Sounds great, man. Take care. So if you've enjoyed this, why not like and subscribe to the Blues Podcast right now? All right?